23 months. 23 months. That's enough time to get an associate degree. It's more than enough, in fact. It's more than the amount of time that Michelangelo took to sculpt David.
Oh my God.
It's enough time to have 2 children. It's almost twice as long as it took to build the Empire State Building. It's almost as long as the waiting period to get a concealed carry permit in Los Angeles. That's a joke. You'll never get a concealed carry. But that's how long we've put up with the most egregious example of government overreach in recent memory. And we did it. We were compliant. We stayed in our homes. We wore our masks when the government health gods told us to. For a while. First it was 2 weeks. Then it was 2 more weeks. Then it was through the end of May. Restrictions were imposed, then they were lifted, then they were imposed again, then lifted again, then imposed again. I tried to get a timeline for you, but the list of changing restrictions from ABC News was 186 pages long. And I don't know how much time I have left, but it's not enough to get through now. This is not a game. This is not a game of Gavin says or Joe says. This is people's lives and livelihoods. Our lives are subject to the law. They are not subject to Gavin. They are not subject to Joe. The law is our only king, and that's the source of our name, Lex Rex Institute. That means the law is king, because that's our only king, not those men. And that's because our country has a very strong history of protecting that sort of thing, usually. Honestly, sometimes offensively so. In 2017, when a University of Louisville basketball coach was accused of paying students $100,000 bribes to join the school, he was placed on paid leave. In 2013, when 4 city employees in Walnut Creek said nothing to the police about a suspected child molester in their workplace, they were placed on paid leave. In 2005, when a Seattle PE teacher was accused of molesting his 6-year-old granddaughter, he was placed on paid leave. When a police officer in Miami had for years been the subject of dozens of complaints, making racist online posts and doxing anybody who complained about it, when 3 sergeants finally did complain about him, he was placed on paid suspension. Yep. Starting to look pretty similar, right? In fact, just earlier this year, when a teacher from Lansing, Michigan started a fight with one of his own students and was filmed choking at that student as onlookers begged her to stop, she too was placed on paid leave. She. But what about you? You've worked through this pandemic. You've answered the call of duty, even when the risk of infection was at its highest. So, how does it feel when you get treated differently from all of these folks? It would seem that paid leave is punishment for all of them. So when it comes to you and your refusal, or to our firefighters and our police officers and their refusal to get a vaccine, at best, they'll fire you. In their minds, that's the best case scenario, because at least then you can collect unemployment. More likely what they'll make you do is they'll make you sit in limbo, waiting around on unpaid administrative leave, in some sort of perverse game of chicken, to see who will back down first. Meanwhile, they sit on piles of taxpayer money, and you have a family. Some thanks. The situation is little better for private sector employees, except that there, many people did lose their jobs. And businesses who were hit the hardest by all these restrictions have now been conscripted into service of the government's manifestos, forced to make their own employees an offer that they can't refuse. Apparently, the administration is too cowardly to enforce these mandates itself, so it demands enforcement from the very people most harmed by its policies over the last 23 months. This stops now, today, right here, right now.
Yes.
And over the past 6 months or so, the Lex Rex Institute has been working tirelessly to ensure that people's rights are respected in this area. You know, I'm not anti-vax, I'm not anti-mask, I'm pro-freedom.
Amen.
I believe that you have the freedom to make your own decisions with respect to medical care, or the medical care of your children. And we've been defending that for huge number of employees now. We've also been contracted by several parent organizations from school districts locally. Yorba Linda, Placentia, about 130 parents there are working with us to defy these, to stand up against these mask mandates, say that they have a right to choose medical care for their own children. And we're looking at partnering with many more school districts so we can do the same thing. Let us know if you're interested in doing that. Now, the issue we're facing is we currently have more cases than we have capacity to fill. Because of that, we've actually had to suspend our intake for wrongful termination cases. We'll still write employer demand letters, but right now, at least for the foreseeable future, we're not taking on those cases. We hope that we can in the coming weeks and months, but it's going to require funding to do it. We've worked through most of our cash reserves in defending the cases that we already have. Oh, and on the issue of election integrity, this is an important one, how to mention this one. Currently, they are prohibiting poll watchers and poll workers to serve at the polls who are not vaccinated. Well, I think you folks probably know, does that tend to be a political issue? Is that a politically nonpartisan thing? Or are people who won't get vaccinated, do they tend to be from one group? Yeah, so that's exactly the sort of tampering with elections and manipulating of procedures that I was talking about. We're currently bringing a case actually on defensive Becky over there, one of her friends, to make sure that we can do that. I got her consent to mention that in writing, but I still want to make sure. But yeah, it's again, we're bringing a lot of cases right now. We have a small staff. I've actually lost some of my staff recently to various issues. A lot of us were sick the past couple of weeks. So we do need funding to be able to take those cases, particularly because when I founded the Lex Rex Institute, it was my goal that none of my clients would ever pay a dime for their own cases. I believe in access to justice. I believe, particularly, there is no constitutional organization besides the Lex Rex Institute that's taking on what I call hard luck cases. Everybody else is looking for the slam dunks. They're looking for the ones where they can make a huge publicity headline, where they can make waves in the legal field and they can get the result they want. Well, we'll take those, and we have taken those. I think that our election issue that I just mentioned about poll workers being required to be vaccinated, I think that is a slam dunk case. But we take a lot of cases that are not slam dunks. Why do we do that? Well, because even if you don't win a case, the result that you get with a lawyer is a lot better than the result that you get without a lawyer. If they're threatening you with termination right now, without a lawyer, the best you might get is termination without any kind of health care benefits, without any kind of severance pay, anything like that. Even if we can't win your wrongful termination suit, we can get you something. And we believe everybody deserves that. So, like I said, I started the Lex Rex Institute with the goal of having free representation for every single one of our clients. We haven't exactly met that goal. Unfortunately, I do have to charge legal fees to the people who call us because we just don't have the funding to cover the cases. So if I had a dime for every person that told me, I can't stand to see what's going on in my state, what's going on in my country, but what the heck do I do about it? I probably have enough to fund all those cases. But, so, give us that dime, because that is doing something about it. When you fund our institution, you are directly contributing to the funding of every single one of our clients so that they can defend not just their constitutional rights, but your constitutional rights. And we believe that's extremely important. Contributions can be made on our website, that's lexrex.org, or they can be mailed to us by check at the address on one of the business cards or pamphlets that you can grab on the table right there. Otherwise, if you want to give us a check tonight, Alex over there, who's with our institution, you want to stand up, Alex, so everybody sees you? This is Alex. We're both named Alex. It's very confusing. He can collect those checks tonight. We hope that all of you will partner with us, whether it's monetarily. We know not everybody can afford to make a contribution, and that makes sense. But even if you're just with us in prayer or in spirit, we appreciate everybody's help. It's only together that we will uphold the Constitution of the United States. It really is. When our founding fathers finished their jobs, when they retired from politics, it's almost uncanny the number of those people who decided next they were going to go into education, or donated their estates to education, or gave to education in various ways. Because they understood that you had to have a public that knew the Constitution if you were going to uphold it. Well, why is that? Because upholding our Constitution requires every single one of us. It's we the people of the United States.
Yeah.
It's time we the people stood up and did exactly what our Constitution asks of us. Well, that concludes what I have to say.